right, good generic time of the internet, and welcome back to the Political Fun Time Happy Hour Deluxe. We appreciate you coming back for another round. It is I, Ty, and I am joined by the one, the only, Andi, Miss Pamphleteer. How are you, Andi?
I'm pretty good. To our listeners, I use she, her pronouns, and when I look on the news, I'm filled with blinding endless rage on every front.
Yes. Yeah. Well, that's what the news is, right? It's if you don't, I think it's a bigger problem. If you look at it and go, huh, seems all right.
Seems like there are a lot of people who are angry on both sides.
Exactly. And for equally valid reasons. That's the important part. These two things are the same.
Yeah.
So today I don't know if it was the last episode. I think it was the one before. We were saying we're gonna, talk about Cop City, and I'm almost glad we've waited, because I think that where the developments in Atlanta have gone have really highlighted exactly kind of the through line we would have gotten to, but now it's a little more in the open. So I think we should dive right in. Andi, will you give us just the rundown of what is Cop City? Why should it be stopped? What has been going on? How is that playing out? How is that a unique in its own instance? How does that reflect a lot of larger trends we've seen? You give the people the rundown.
No, you can find me on YouTube. Cop City is, I'm going to say, the nickname of the training facility that is going to be used for interdepartmental training exercises, where they teach police who are already SWAT certified, like already do the fucking military operator fucking drag, right? Just to arrest fucking crackheads and stuff, right? And so,
oh my god, SWAT as operator drag is Continue. Sorry.
Yeah, and so they're going to teach them how to.
Killed me early in this one, Andi. You done killed me early.
Yeah, they're going to teach basically these cops from all over the country to do not just entry into one room, but how to lock down whole buildings, how to lock down whole blocks, how to operate in destroyed structures, right? And how to detain and interrogate people. And all of these techniques were perfected in the Middle East, in Africa, in Latin American and Southeast Asian military dictatorships that the United States fucking not just spawned, but trained, right? So then now that we've, developed the techniques in the colonies, we're bringing them back into a metropole, which is one of the bylines of...
sounds real familiar.
Fascism, if you will.
Oh, I've been saying it wrong this whole time.
Yeah, you were. No, yeah, and so that's one of the byline descriptions of how you can tell you're moving towards fascism, right?
So actually, I didn't realize that it was geared specifically to already SWAT certified officers, because even in their own press releases, even in how this has been publicized and what by their own terms, this is how this has been justified. And I guess I'm not surprised by them not pointing that out, explicitly, but it's been modern policing requires modern solutions. So we're going to train your friendly neighborhood cop to be a more friendly and more neighborhood of a cop. And I guess, that was obviously incorrect, but that kind of gives light to it even further, where it is you are taking already the, is it 1033 program, the military hardware kind of transfer program, like the people who already have fucking MRAPs and M4s, and saying, no, let's harden you up. You're still too soft for this beat.
Yeah. I mean,
and this beat being all American cities.
Yes. I am literally a lot of this is me using analysis to decode their metaphor, right? Because, cops speak deeply in euphemism, right? And the actual, what do you call them? Curriculum are, oh, we could potentially keep them in check, and that's like the sort of the line that the liberals go with, like, no, like we do need the cops to be well trained, and that's why they need a massive amount of money to turn this force into a fucking cop training facility, despite the massive overinflated training budgets that don't ever seem to fucking help, and in fact quite often hurt a lot, right? And so people don't like this, and they're protesting at the site, and preventing any development from going on there. And that's, go ahead.
Well, and I was going to say, I think it's important to say, this site, it's not just what they're going to do or how they're going to do that is objectionable, or how they've gone about it. And there's plenty on that front. There's plenty of, it's like a city owned, but it's unincorporated territory. So it should be under the jurisdiction of DeKalb County. Yet, because the city owns it, they were able to kind of skirt around a lot of areas where there would theoretically, through county structures, be opportunities for residents and other stakeholders to voice their opinion, to participate in deciding whether or not to do it, et cetera, or at least to bring some accountability to this. But apart from all of that, it is, like you said, it may not be old growth forest, but it's an important forested area, both, as we've seen, you can so very often see where even within the same city, the effects of climate change and rising temperatures are felt more in more or less brutal fashions based on what's the tree cover like. And based on what the tree cover is like, you can pretty accurately tell what the home values are like, and where the neighborhood investment is, and et cetera, et cetera. But it also, in addition to mitigating pollution from that major metropolitan area, helps with flood control, helps with water management. Like, this is an enormous area that as a natural preserve, as it stands now, it's not just, oh, we're going to lose some forest walking trails. There are actually significant ecological impacts to the city brought by this area that is now going to be developed, and that's all just what you get to before you get to the how much do you like the taste of boots, and would you like to taste it more?
Yeah. Yes to all of that. It's get ready.
It's already oppressive and racist before you get to the cop part of it.
Yes, get ready. Anthropologist David Graeber, one of the last things that he was working
7
on,
minutes and 53 seconds. Continue.
Was talking about, he had this like side concept that he didn't manage to work into the book Bullshit Jobs, and that he didn't know if he'd ever have enough to make it a full-on books, but he called it batshit construction, right? Which is that there are all of these development contracts in America and England and in a lot of places where they don't make sense. They're not an efficient use of money. They're like massive kickbacks, right?
But my markets.
Yeah.
How could this happen?
And so we have to start making the constructions we make and intend them to last for 100+ years, right? We because if we're building with wood, we need to let the forests grow back from all of the fucking trees we cut down. If we're making them from stone, we should imagine them like that they could last a lot longer than that, right? And be planning for them to be able to survive floods, to be able to survive like earthquakes as best as possible, and all of these other things, and like understand, like, yeah,
you're saying this descriptively, or prescriptively, as opposed to describing what the bullshit construction is, right? Sorry, I might have missed that.
Yeah,
okay,
I'm moving forward from bullshit construction into describe
gotcha.
Like, yeah. Because it's not like we won't need homes going forward, right? We still will need homes, but we can't be, making houses whose fucking walls are rotting through in 15 years, right? Because that's nothing. That's literally like creating an investment, like something that you're treating like an investment, that you're treating like a speculative tool, a speculative instrument, right? And then making it so that its value won't last for 30 years, right? It won't even last for fucking 5 years.
It's a manufactured home and mobile home problem.
Yeah.
It is very reminiscent of that, where you have this kind of a sensible, okay, you can't afford a single family home that is the traditional kind of vehicle for the average family to be able to recoup some of their shelter costs and get just a taste of this speculative appreciation. And then you have, that's like Warren Buffett's biggest thing is buying up mobile home parks, evicting, kicking everyone out. But in the meantime, all those years you did pay for it, well, especially if it was built 90s or before. I mean, a lot of manufacturer stuff did come a long way, but even in the best case scenario, the vast majority are still going to suffer a more significant degradation at a more rapid pace and be more vulnerable to small things causing catastrophic bits. But that's kind of the, oh well, you can technically get in here, but even there it's a scam. And yet when you see that stretching beyond just manufactured homes or mobile homes to quote unquote standard, regular construction single family bits, it's like you're pre-stripping the copper wires out of it basically to make your money and leaving it to rot in a time frame that is just outside the statutory limitations on when you would be liable for your construction falling apart around the people who bought it from you.
Yeah. And that's exactly it. And so a lot of these projects, they're like engaged in to give kickbacks to developers, and it's always safe for liberals and conservatives to put more money into the police budget. And so taking a huge portion to give to a developer who's giving you a kickback, right? And then hiding it in the police budget, like no one's ever going to question you on that. And you can ignore the kinds of wackos who would, right? That's the political wisdom. And so the only way that you can realistically stop these, you mentioned that like if it was at the county, they would have been able to stop it. Like, of course they didn't go through the county because they would have been able to stop it, right?
Yeah. Well, and they've been pitching it as this kind of public-private partnership, like that's the new Reaganism there. We take it as like the three scariest words in the English language are public-private partnership. But it's exactly that, because there's all these kickbacks and there is this kind of back and forth exchange where you can say, oh, we're putting up this much up front, but they're putting in this much from the private side and all the benefits there. There was, let me find the Cop City is a $90 million facility, and I can't find it actually. It was, I think that there was quote unquote only $30 million coming from the city. There was like promises from other landowners they had to basically do land swaps on to, create this whole contiguous space that they're going to pour $1 million in. But it's like, okay, but you just gave them more than $1 million worth of improved land for what they already had. Like, I'm sorry, that's not chipping in. But out of that $90 million, it's something like $30 million is coming from the city. But a cursory Google search will reveal that the 2023 budget for the general fund of Atlanta is $734 million. We know the cops are, of course, the top line in that, but we know this. We don't have to look. We know this. We can assume this. We can assume this broadly and widely and be correct far more often than we're wrong. But Andy, do you want to take a crack at out of that $734 million? You want to guess what the police in Atlanta are getting for fiscal year 2023?
240?
Motherfucker, 236. God damn, she's an oracle. Yeah, $236 million. So yeah, you can hide it in the police budget, but even out of this $90 million, and I'm sure that this is you can take this from different angles and have this be more or less accurate, but that at least the reported number of the city's contribution was only $30 million out of that $90 million. That's fucking 10%. This facility that will exceed what LAPD or NYPD or any other police force that is much larger than Atlanta's has in their training facilities, and it is explicitly for this national project of not only can we serve capital in that sense of property protection as the primary function of policing, and that's going to come back around. Oh fuck, is that going to come back around?
You just reminded me that the NYPD has offices in other fucking countries.
Yeah, isn't that a fucking trip?
Yeah.
Isn't that a trip? It's just your friendly neighborhood cop operating out of fucking Dubai.
It's wild. Yeah.
Yeah. So
Continuing.
I keep derailing you. That was just the even within that framework, which I don't disagree with anything you were laying out there. It is just such a, for all the things we can't have and all the money we quote unquote don't have and all of the things that would be quote unquote too expensive in a single city that's got a $750 million budget, cops get a quarter bill of that. And that this whole thing is a relatively insignificant line item, yet is able to function in the way you're describing as an enormous kickback to kind of further codify that relationship between police and property.
Yeah. Yeah, that's just absolutely correct. Nobody really likes this, like, except, like, police don't even really like being trained. They resent it. And the only way that they ever, like, they've got, like, really, like, stereotypical movie jock, like, brain where it's got to be like a game to them. They have to have, like, the stupid SWAT training, like, exercises that are just like time trial shit, right? And they'd, like, test their scores against one another, like, and fucking dick measure 24/7. And
yeah, I can't be told that I didn't already know something, but I sure can pursue a proxy for saying, like, way bigger than you, bro, way bigger than you.
Yeah. The what a fucking. So yeah, people don't want to be paying more money, and they even kind of resent having to pay money out to the cops. They're just too afraid to not have cops, right? Because they can't really afford. When I say people, I mean conservatives, because they can't really afford to lose anything. They're like afraid as hell all the fucking time, and they just can't talk about it and can't express it in any way because having emotion sucks to them. So they have to keep fucking paying out the ass for these cops because, oh well, crime still exists. We gotta dump more money into it, and if it keeps the crime out of their neighborhoods specifically, which that's not what keeps the crime out of their neighborhoods, right?
Well, and I think that not only that, but in Atlanta, that's one of the unique kind of cross currents that hits there has been a rising rate of crime, particularly violent crime in Atlanta, continues to rise, and that's what you describe as just the kind of the state of equilibrium. That's just the background noise. That's just the way things are, and that's kind of true in all cases. But with a minor uptick in crime, you're able to leverage that even further. And this isn't going to do a goddamn thing about that. This is, even on its own terms, it's not likely to. But in reality, it obviously isn't. And it just goes to show how powerful that is, how powerful that fear-based logic is, and how much we saw it during the whole COVID stretch of all of this decrying this rise in violent crime, and it's up 14%. It's like, yeah, from a 50-year low. It's New York is so dangerous. People are being murdered at a rate 1/20th of what happened in the average mid-70s year. Like, it's and a lot of this is obviously downstream of environmental factors and lead and all of these things, but like those statistics are so often leveraged so cynically to make that work, but it's done because it's fucking effective. And I think you raise an important kind of side element, is that fear engendered by the fact that you don't have the extra room to take on any loss without it severely, undermining your situation. And that's amongst the fucking petty bourgeois.
Yeah. It I guess should be noted that Atlanta has it's basically the only city in the world with a black bourgeoisie. Or not in the world,
True.
in America.
Yeah.
And because it has a black bourgeoisie, they don't have cash bail. That's an unequivocally good move to have been made. Like I'm not saying that there's anything particularly more wrong with the black bourgeoisie than there is with the white bourgeoisie, right? It's just the culture of the city is different because of this, right? There is this element of conservatism in Atlanta, in
Well,
places
and things
that
can be obscured that are motivated by class interest that usually coincide along racial lines in other cities. But what they see with the black majority and a black bourgeoisie class, like there are certain things that they can be obscured, and I think that's just add that into the reasons why this can happen in Atlanta. You know, at a scale very, very far outstripping its relative size of its police, but it can still work there. And at least some of the allegations of the racism inherent in that can be obscured by the fact that the class interests aren't as neatly divisible along those lines as in many other major cities, especially at that level of a just metropolitan size.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. And yeah, so what do
Do you
we
want to kind of hit like the what does the resistance look like to this point, and kind of give us at least a general overview of the timeline and where we stand now?
Yeah, so people have been trying to go to the meetings in the cities and grease the wheels of power and tug the levers of power and etc. But the people who have gotten the most like targeted violence and harassment from the police are the people doing the direct action, who are actually going out to the site that they're planning to bulldoze and living there, in the trees on the ground there, and organizing events and protests and sabotaging the machinery uh, so that they couldn't easily continue doing the operation, even if people did leave, even if they were what's the word, detained or captured or driven out, right? And so the it was in shit. There was no, that last bowl was too much.
Are you thinking about of Tortuguita?
Yeah, getting into Tortuguita.
Yeah, I was gonna say that's the end of January.
Yes.
Which is amazing. It seemed I was looking that up, and I thought that was way more recent, but that was the end of January that they went in there with a multi agent, everyone from fucking state troopers to highway patrol to local cops, like an incredible array of different agencies. So basically, at the end of January, all these different agencies go in to do a sweep to remove those people who had been living and kind of that continued occupation as a form of resistance to it. Okay, so Tortuguita is in there. There is body cam footage of the incident, but not by the officers that actually did the shooting. What is first released is these other cops out there. You hear gunshots in the distance, and it is a pop 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 pop. And there's a couple initial shots fired, and then a bunch fired, and then you start hearing calls for medic, hear officer hit, and what you hear in that first round of body cam footage that came out is one of the cops, who's either body cam it's coming from or is adjacent to it, says something like, what was it, like dumbasses hit their own guy or something, and it was this like, wait, it was a friendly fire incident, or at least it seemed to be. Then they come out and say that no, it was Tortuguita that had fired on them, that they had a gun registered to him, that he had a gun on him at the scene, yada, yada, yada. There was a lot of things that were admitted there, a lot of, any definitive proof of there actually having been a gun, of it actually having been registered to him, of it actually having been fired, and that actually having been what hit the fucking cop that got shot. And so, that was, is there anything between there and now, or do you want to kind of, should we go, because the most recent news on that is the independent autopsy reports that came out.
Yeah.
Because the state autopsy had not been released to the family. And the most recent one showed, God, it's grisly. That his hands were up when he got shot, or that their hands were up when they got shot. My apologies. Tortuguita, but their hands were up, and I can't find it's over a dozen. They were shot over a dozen times. The article I have pulled up does not is not giving me
The business.
the business, but multiple times. I mean, through the eye, through the skull, through multiple limbs. But the independent autopsy, who I believe the person who did it was previously, like, in a state position, like chief coroner or something like that. Okay, so there's the Cobb County Medical Examiner's Office and the GBI, Georgia Bureau of Investigations, I believe. And then the family had an additional one, but yeah, so it's like, it stunk up front. It was ridiculous up front, and there was a whole lot of you didn't have to be all that skeptical of what cops say after a shooting to see some at least potential holes. What they didn't release, what they didn't prove, what they didn't demonstrate was a lot. And now this comes out, and it's like, I wish that was fucking surprising. But there was additionally, after Tortuguita's death, and over the last couple of weeks, there was some, protests that involved property destruction. And I think you're a little more up to date on what actually happened there than I am. I kind of followed up more on the legal fallout.
Yeah. So basically, you can tell certain habits of anti-fascist protesters, of police abolitionists, of black bloc resistance, that kind of thing, right? And so there was a concert going on, planned for this day, on the grounds, and the cops came to shut it down, and a bunch of people with black hoodies and black masks and camo pants, for some reason, formed up and pushed the cops back and threw a bunch of fireworks at them, and damaged all of the property that was the Capitol, the machines. What are they called? Construction machines of
bulldozers, backhoes, and shit.
Yes, that stuff. Thank you. They
didn't they get some like electrical infrastructure too?
I cannot recall that right now.
Okay.
And so and that is, but if they did attack electrical infrastructure, that's really interesting, because in the last year and change, and actually significantly before this as well, there have, it is pretty common for right-wing attacks, including white supremacist motivated and queerphobia motivated attacks, right, where somebody would drive up, shoot out a transformer, and leave, right? And and now they've upgraded to attacking substations, right?
Yeah.
And we've actually seen an uptick in arrests of people who are planning attacks against substations, right? Because after a couple of successful ones, because this attacks infrastructure, because this gets in the way of businesses and potentially inconveniences the very wealthy, right? And the white supremacists who are doing this they don't know the electrical grid well enough to figure out who's going to be affected by it and how much. One second.
Well, okay, and just to clarify, I was wrong. I was seeing that there was pictures I was seeing. There's a couple of large power lines, and it looks like what they had set on fire was, to your point, like actual construction equipment and maybe some outbuildings or some storage kind of containers.
Yeah.
But I do think that is an important thread to keep in mind, and something we talked about a couple months back when there was the one in North Carolina. But we need to come back to, because I think there's been more that's come out along there, as well as additional attacks. But even this, like in the New York Times article, like they described the people taking place in that, or taking part in that, as wearing both, black and camouflage. And if only we had Brent on here. He's lived in Georgia. Maybe he could speak to the left there. But that is a kind of a weird thing for Black Bloc to do, is to wear camouflage instead of black.
It's kind of a weird thing for cops to do, is not pull out guns when they feel even the slightest bit threatened.
Yeah, yeah.
And
And
having
it was
explosives
at
thrown
least
at you, that's very
at
threatening.
least well, at least what I saw, it was, the reporting was like they had commercial grade fireworks, and it was, yeah,
With
the
your
same kind of
hands.
shit. Well, the same kind of shit we saw over the last several years of protests. Roman candles and things that snap, crackle, and pop, but are like in no way as threatening or intended to be as threatening as, I don't know, fucking flashbangs or like hundreds of gallons of tear gas. Like, but in response to that property destruction, and I think what we can't know, and I'm not comfortable really making a solid claim either way, but we saw an event the cops wanted to close down. We saw them not be able to close it down, and then someone fired off a couple bottle rockets, and the entire forest was raided. And that was what I was seeing as
Oh yes.
multiple statements of people saying, it
Yeah.
had nothing to do with whether you were there, anywhere near it, whether you had even been in attendance at the concert or anything like that. And
I do have to finish off this thread, which is that
sorry, go.
it would be based if they, in defense of the forest, burned the Capitol, and if they, in defense of the forest, drove the police off with fucking fireworks.
Yes.
Fireworks.
Yes.
Right? I've had a mortar go off like literally 15 feet from me, literally 5 feet from me. The worst you get is itty bitty fucking burns, and unless you're wearing polyester, it's not really going to hurt you that bad, right? Like it's a loud flash and it's scary.
That I, as an 8-year-old, used to take apart and pour into big things and light on fire, and you lose some eyebrows, but. Yeah, not munitions, but they made the fucking number of adjectives applied to these fireworks to make them sound like but they were big scary fireworks. Really was kind of like, all right, creative writing award in journalism right there. Like that's
yeah, and so it's cops' feelings over protesters' lives is what it ends up being. And so if they did this, it's very fine, actually. Our natural world is important. It's fucking important, okay? And we can't value capital over that.
Well, and that's the big thing, and that's the big I think deliberate conflation that's happening, and we've seen it happen before. But in addition to, and I listened to a bit on It Could Happen Here, the Cool Zone Media. I think it was Garrison that had been there and done the reporting on it. But what I'd heard there, I'm seeing in a lot of the other articles that 6 people were arrested, all 6 were white, 5 were from out of state. There was a kind of seemed to be some variance in whether people were being detained or formally arrested, who was being let out and who was being charged with things that required a hearing, even with no, without cash bail and, that kind of thing. But we're seeing the same rhetoric and the same narratives that were so prominent in a lot of the Black Lives Matter and the George Floyd era of protesting, outside agitators. And I think even in the past we had talked about the historical roots of that and all of these, be they white communists being hung by the Klan or anyone else, especially when things are happening in big city areas, there's a lot of room to conflate that and by just selective charging or not being as harsh on locals, make it look like this is not part of the community. But the Atlanta police chief, their statement was, it doesn't take a rocket scientist or an attorney to tell you that setting fires and breaking windows isn't protest. It's terrorism. And that's what a lot of these charges have been. It's domestic terrorism charges.
In the way that like in the wake of the 2008 collapse and all of the Occupy stuff, and then everyone's like, oh, sensible reform is socialism, and everybody being like, okay, I'm a socialist now, I'm going to start reading socialist authors, right?
Yeah.
I wonder how sensible resistance to absolutely unreasonable conditions being framed as terrorism is going to make people start thinking of the word terrorism, right? Let's meditate on that for a moment.
Let's meditate.
I said meditate. So I guess this is an ad. My most recent episode ain't doing as hot as the other ones. It's about music and political ontologies of violence. So
What'd you say?
I'm doing an ad that you're free to cut. Called Tears, Private Tears. Fucking watch it.
Oh no, I saw it. It was great. It was great.
Now
You've been
watch
on
it
a
again.
fucn tear.
I have.
I will. Juice them plays.
The one I wrote in a blur the other day that I'm working on is about like how much political ontology matters. Not ontology. Political bodily autonomy for women is to be taken seriously, which comes to the ultimate conclusion that if a woman is ultimately responsible for taking care of an infant who cannot take care of itself, who cannot ask for help, who cannot communicate its needs up to this point, right? And she, if she has the ultimate responsibility for care, then she has to be able to withhold her labor, which means that infanticide is technically should technically be permissible. It shouldn't be, like, promoted, but it shouldn't be stopped, so that if a woman thinks she might need to make that decision, she can talk to people about it, and arrangements can be made and help can be given. But yeah, it's fucking hard. It's hardcore, but that's actually, like, infanticide might actually be fucking good.
Well, and I think that at that point, it's one of those, like, you could very easily, in a functioning country where adoption was like an actual answer to these kind of things, like totally feasible there. But I think the principle, it kind of illustrates the principle even more, where it's like, oh no, it's not just that the bodily autonomy and having access to, abortion, or, looking at the fucking landscape coming up. I was going to say, that's exactly where I was going. Like, looking at the landscape, like, that's not just a passing remark. That's an actual baseline that might fucking is being lost in a lot of ways. But, it is so easy to, there's a quote, and I think it's from some religious official, some higher up in some church, but it was, saying like, there's a critique of the religious right, and that the unborn are such a convenient group to advocate for. They make no demands. They have no opinions. They have no voice of their own. They can never tell you that you were wrong. You fucking cowards. Like that. And yet, you can take it further and look at it and acknowledge what that is. But it's like, I think that even that framing just, points out the lie on the other side of the, pro-life and pro-family. And you're going like, no, you're just trying to win what you see as a genetic warfare. Like, there's nothing redeeming about that. And it's just a really, really cynical,
anthropologist David Graeber. It's games which are competitions between men which use women and childbirth as pawns.
Ooh. And I think that, there is a like a vulgar evolutionary perspective that is the misunderstanding of natural selection and evolution that I think gives rise to, like, social Darwinism and trains of thought like that, where you can look at that and it's like superficially make a case for it, but then the downside is you're Andrew fucking Tate, like, or worse, someone who likes Andrew Tate. It is interesting that it really is kind of the summation of the same thing that you see from, like, 80s comics, women be this or that, to the 90s and aughts and the gay panic and the backlash and the current trans panic and everything there. It's all just this insistence that no, it is a game and women are my pawns. And it's like, dude, you just said that out loud, or damn near it. Increasingly just saying it out loud. Like, come on, you think you can't think you're the good guy here.
Yeah, it is what it is. And to all of this, like, the point that I'm making is that some society have considered animals and even plants as a type of person, but people can still objectify other people, right? You can treat people like they are things, and you can create property relationships about people regardless of whether or not you consider that person in some way like us, right? In whatever way you think that they deserve some kind of rights, some kind of bodily autonomy. The time might come that you have to Donner Party someone you love, or get Donner Partied yourself, or starve together, but those are decisions that will be made at the time, right? And we, I'd honestly choose to starve together, to be quite honest,
Yeah.
or that's what I'd like to think I'd choose.
Yeah.
And and we cope ahead by thinking, like, we think of like how much this extreme hunger would bite at you and for how long, and decide to work effectively toward our goals. Like, a moment longer is a moment longer, and my life doesn't really matter more than the lives of my loved ones, because I love them and I am prepared to die for them. So why wouldn't I be prepared to actually die for them, right?
Yeah.
Anyway, speaking of that,
Cops.
I was going to bring up Silicon Valley Bank.
Okay, yeah. I mean, I think the Cop City thing is pretty well tied up. It's there's not, what are we going to rehash the property destruction is not violence thing again? Because although that's maybe not as unrelated to the SVB collapse and all that as it might appear. Anyway, so let's just dive into that. What are your thoughts on the Silicon Valley Bank, other than haha fuck you?
Yeah, so it definitely feels like we're about to enter into another depression, because the stock market, through all of the upsets, all of the fuck ups, has continued to rise generally, even when there have been a couple precipitous drops. That has continued an upward trend, more or less, right? But Silicon Valley Bank going under, and then a few days later another bank goes under. This is not necessarily something that will cause it, but we're seeing how much economic instability there is and how far they've pushed their fractional lending practices, right?
Can I push back on a couple select things, if only to emphasize portions of what you just said is where I think the real takeaway is?
Hit it.
Okay, so first of all, you have Silicon Valley Bank. It's kind of in the name.
Yep.
Their sheets are deeply bound up with a bunch of fucking companies and a bunch of people who make their money from these companies that do not make revenue, that are incredibly cash poor, that are viable largely only through the effective 0% interest rates over the last since 2008, and the lack of those rising on the Fed level. And there also, it seems like there was a whole lot of people who would otherwise, or who definitely were financially sophisticated enough to know that the FDIC limit is at $250,000 per depositor, yada yada yada, and usually would, like, there were like literal like subsections of financial services to basically vest all of your cash you needed to have access to across a wide variety of accounts, so that FDIC limit covers everything you have deposited. But at Silicon Valley Bank, if you put in X amount more, or everything you had from here, or did all your banking there, so that you knowingly were exposed and had no federal fucking insurance above that 200. Actually, it wasn't 250. I think it's 200,000. Shit, now I'm double second guessing. But either way,
It's 250.
that it was 100,000 before, and I think it is 250 now. But above that limit, you were knowingly exposed. But for doing that, they would just give you mortgages. They would just give you, like it's either 93 or 98% of their holdings were above and beyond that. And the only reason that was the case was because they were doing basically shady kickbacks to their fucking, depositors to incentivize that. And so in exchange for putting all of your shit at risk above and beyond what the FDIC would cover, you got a 0% mortgage, or, all these other convenient lending things. So fuck them. Let them eat shit. And then secondly, the other bank that went out was deeply, deeply, deeply into crypto shit.
Yeah.
So yeah, so the part where you're incredibly and totally right, and this is the, I think, defining bit, depression, recession, or neither, is that the instability there, it is that increasingly ratcheting up the levering, all of these lessons that we like saw played out as clearly as they could be played out, that no one learned from, even from within a capitalistic framework. Like nobody, even if you drink the fucking Kool-Aid, has any excuse for not seeing what we saw play out, and you know, in the fucking 20s and 30s, in the
You know,
80s, in the
it's
aughts, in the aughts again, and in all of this. Like, no fucking excuse for any of that. But what is the case is it is that there's just less and less profit to be made. And so that is why, you've seen such an outsized emphasis by Powell and the Fed in what is, these raising of rates, even when it's not getting at the drivers of inflation, except for something that is a, secondary or even tertiary factor within that, which is fucking labor costs. And oh my God, wage gains actually beat inflation for fucking once over the last half a goddamn century. We can't have this. And so this whole time, these rate hikes have largely been at the risk of tanking the fucking economy and starting a fucking recession.
with the intention.
What we cannot have is actual meaningful gains in the share of productivity and profits by workers. We can light it. We can torch a good section as long as we don't fucking allow that. And yet now there's finally talk of the Fed not only not going a half a point, not only holding it a quarter point, maybe not raising, and maybe opening the door to cuts, because this rate hike has actually, affected decently rich people. And so now it fucking matters. Now it's too much. Now this stupid just turn the knob until something breaks. Honestly, they're probably still going to go with it, and it's going to break elsewhere. It's going to cause strain elsewhere in the global financial system, and for the sake of saving Americans the pain. But that is I don't think that it belies as much instability as it might appear, but it absolutely points to the fact that there is just, the margins are racing towards zero, and all of this Ponzi scheme extractivism is being laid bare at, going, oh my God, but if you charge us more than like 1.25% for fucking cheap capital, then it doesn't work. And so now it's, you're caught between there's no room to lower rates if there is actual economic friction that requires it, but you can't raise, or because rather, you can't raise them high enough to give yourself that slack in the system that it definitionally needs.
Yep.
Because everything is so overextended and such a just facade that it can't function even with historically low but non-zero costs to capital. Yet it's, at the same time, that lack of liquidity is completely, or at least the vast majority, can be attributed to just the fact that, like, we're doing the Gilded Age shit again. We're doing Gilded Age things, and all the capital is with 4 people. No wonder there's nothing to go around.
I gotta point out, Peter Thiel pulled out his money and then announced that he had,
Yes!
and that's what caused the run. Peter Thiel, who isn't liking the Republicans' chances if they're just running on the transgender shit alone. And if the economy tanks, that's actually pretty good for his fucking cyber monarchist ass.
Man, I was totally like agreeing on like the first 3 levels of that. I had not considered levels 4 and 5 of the, that's actually, that's dark.
Yeah. The
dark and plausible.
Yeah. And anyway, it's disaster capitalism, right? He might have realized that the bank was like not going to make it, and made the decision to take his money out, even if it did cause a run. It could have just been that, right? And it would still be reprehensible. They blamed it on having an LGBT and a black. on the
Yes!
board, even though the board also contained somebody from Goldman
Ironically!
Sachs. Fucking Goldman
Well, and it
Sachs.
was literally like we have 2 blacks, an LGBT, and 2 veterans, and that's our fucking diversity on the board. And somebody in the Wall Street Journal, of their own volition, unironically, and apparently intentionally, came out and said, I'm not saying that a room full of 12 white men would have avoided this.
But that was what he was.
But I literally like I thought people reporting that, and I thought they were eating the onion, and no,
They were not.
No, they were not. Somebody said that, and it was in the Wall Street Journal.
And that was on whose paper? Who on the Wall Street Journal?
That one guy.
I'm gonna need you to spell it out. That was a real question.
Isn't that a Murdoch?
Let's find out. I can hear you finding out as we speak.
Founded by Charles Dow and Edward. Jesus Christ. Dow. Oh my God, I didn't actually realize that Dow Jones were the founders of the journal. I probably should have known that. News Corp. Isn't News Corp Murdoch?
Murdoch is News Corp, yep.
Yeah. There we go. So yeah, news as of 07. News Corp made an unsolicited takeover bid. Yeah. I wonder was the journal, despite being founded by Dow and Jones, was it as egregious as it is now pre the Murdoch takeover?
I haven't actually read any Wall Street Journal articles from before the Murdoch takeover, so I couldn't tell.
Well, I was raised with that's like you can't the
let's talk about your
liberal trash, but the Wall Street Journal, that's a reliable publication.
Yeah, so that's sounds about as good as the Daily Hail.
What were we getting at there?
These bankers who are so unaccountable that they're willing to play into fucking culture war bullshit and tank the economy so that they can get their fucking golden parachute still, right? They're
and that's like not even the exception anymore. That's just the in anything that has fallen apart over the last several years, it's always been and on the way out, here's more money than any other, I don't know, 10,000 Americans will collectively make in their life for fucking it up, but not fucking it up more.
Mm-hmm. Yep. And so what we're gonna do is they've when these closed, they didn't just lose their access to their money, and most of it they're not getting back, right? These companies, they also lost access to their lines of credit, which they would also need, right? And so they're going to be, running around going to other banks that are also over leveraged, right? And be asking for loans without a clear revenue stream, right? And lines of credit without a clear revenue stream, right? And so if, Fed loans don't, or, the Fed doesn't fix the rate, they're not going to be given favorable loans, and then they'll be over leveraged and won't be able to fucking handle their lines of credit and go under.
Okay. And that raises, I guess, what might be the kind of hidden fault that might speak to a more systemic or continuing banking failure that has, recessionary or depressionary impacts. And that is that at SVB, the reason that they were so over leveraged is because on their books, rather than short-term treasuries that they could trade at par on a much more liquid basis, they had a bunch of, I believe it was 30-year mortgage notes as mortgage-backed securities there. And as the rates have gone crazy, if you've got a 30-year note at 4% and you have to liquidate it because your depositors are taking their money out and rates are where they are now, you're underwater on that. And so I think that is basically was one of the big imbalances that made a small thing cascade within their system. And so as people are looking to other banks and as that kind of effect ripples out, I guess it could spread more. And goddamn,
Yeah. The
now, yeah. Now,
so
now that you say it like that, I guess, yeah. Buy gold, everybody, buy gold.
no. Buy things that you'll need.
Yes. And by gold, I mean shelf stable soup for your family.
And the people who do these things have names and addresses, right? Sometimes multiple addresses, so you'll need friends. But
Yikes.
the
This is
yeah,
what happens when our lawyer leaves us.
yeah, Brent, we miss you. Never
Help
offering
keep Andy
legal
out of jail.
advice. Yes. The sorry, yeah, no.
We're
He'll
talking about a soup distribution network here, is what
yes,
we're saying.
mutual aid.
Mutual
And
aid to the face.
oh, that's way further than I ever went, and you scolded me just a moment ago.
Yeah, move on, because I'm going to cut that part anyway.
Okay.
I am what the French call le coward.
Le covarde. What we had a
Systemic
third.
Domino's
Oh yes,
collapse, capitalism, great system.
yes. The and it. The last part of this is that back for the longest time they would raid our pensions constantly and then get caught for doing it and go to jail, and so they made us put all of our fucking retirements on the free market.
So
And
we could
so
raid them, and then it was quote unquote our fault when we're destitute because Social Security went away before we retired.
yeah, so they're cutting Social Security, and they're fucking when they make a run, it's us who can't get the money, right? That's
Yeah.
that's the exact same thing that happened with the pension funds, right? So we have to understand that when they legalize things like graft, when they legalize theft and robbery for themselves and criminalize our existences and create these fucking facilities so they can do the most harsh violence against us with ruthless organized gangs who do fucking Navy SEAL cosplay, things are only going to get worse unless we take a stand and say you can't make it any worse. And I know that we don't give you options. There's no easy way to get involved. You have to put in the effort on your end to find out what's going on in your area and get people excited about being able to help make a future that's worth living in, because the future isn't going anywhere. It's coming straight for us. You can't stay neutral on a moving goddamn planet.
And as okay, there's been this national response to Cop City, and of course, surprise, surprise, it's been cast as outside agitators. These aren't part of our community, et cetera, et cetera. And there is one future in which, and it was encouraging to hear some interviews I listened to of people who are out there, and it being basically the rhetoric being there, we can only win because we can't stop fighting, so we have to either fight until we win or we don't get to choose what we're doing anymore, kind of thing. And there's one future where on a national level there are the required responses, and we're able to achieve at least a better level of cooperation and a better allocation of our collective efforts and our social wealth towards ends that will, at this point, help us weather and improve our society despite what we have baked into the fucking calculation as far as the future marching towards us goes. On the other side of it, in the bad world, things will break down to more local instances of very similar kind of planes of resistance and of necessary cooperation and of the need for community and mutual aid and social persistence, I guess. And so that is why I think what you're saying there, Andy, is the answer either way, because those kind of local organizations and those local organizational structures and those community building and communal efforts are either what will enable the resistance on the larger scale in a way that actually wins what you're trying to win, or are going to be the terrain you will have to retreat to and fight on with you and your neighbors and those you love anyway. So that's in light of maybe another financial crisis. Does it feel weird that we're only as old as we are, and this is like where you can kind of financial collapses are kind of blasé? We can just be like, oh, I've seen 3 of these already. Okay,
Yeah, I mean,
here's the arc.
For a while there, it was like, I heard about one of these in my daddy's time, and so you don't know what to
Yeah.
expect. But we seen a fucking couple, huh?
We could ask our grandpa, hey, what was the collapse like? And, our hypothetical grandkids would be like, which was your favorite financial crisis?
Yeah. Fuck. The one where we got up and made a change, like like
the one
society...
that enabled us to have grandkids. That's the one.
Yeah,
and the one
that's
that catalyzed whatever it is that led us to bring 2 generations more into this fucking world.
Yeah, it's fucked. And what was the last thing that we wanted to do? Was that
probably a topic for a different bit. I think that's plenty. I think that the tie-in is sufficient there because the entire landscape of what Cop City, like the things they are saying out loud, how they are by their own terms justifying it, all speaks to the need to be able to more intensively and effectively police and control large swaths of particularly urban centers, or at least areas that require large-scale police operations to put down instances of unrest and of protest.
Nice.
These fucking banks and them collapsing, and Peter Thiel making sure that he and his get what they got in there, the downstream be damned. These are not unrelated topics. Even if these dominoes of SVB and whatever the New York one was, I can't remember, bank names, they're very stupid and pretentious. Even if those dominoes fall and they don't hit anything else, and it's only as precarious as it was before, and only as overextended and overleveraged as it was before and has been, and by definition has to be, then okay. And if it doesn't, if those dominoes tap anything else and they run any amount of distance down the line, well, let's not make sure that the cops are more equipped than they already are to crack our skulls at a Henry Ford like assembly line pace,
and more emboldened to work with the far right.
Yes. Yeah. And more subjected to training that is rooted in far right adversarial, occupational, and like the warrior cop mindset. That was, maybe this is just a cool thing to bring it back to the in The Intercept. Whose article is this? By George Cheedy. There's a article about from the end of January. It might have actually been before Torture Week was killed, but they have a quote from Vitali. I lied, that's a different one. The one about how the Memphis chief of police had the cross training with IDF and IDP. When it comes to that training, and that being the entire justification for this complex, this article by Alice Sperry, training, whether in Israel or at home, has done little to address the underlying problems of U.S. policing or to prevent violent police killings like that of Nichols. Speaking of Tyree Nichols, a quote from Alex Vitali: "Most people who call for more training as a response to abusive policing have little idea of what that really involves. The kinds of training police are given in Israel is actually part of the problem because it encourages a warrior mindset in police and exposes them to practices that would be unconstitutional in the U.S. Fucking Cop City, it's not like a mock-up little town where you learn how to, better your community relations or how to more effectively keep people safe. No, it's a mock city where you can exercise and practice your maneuvers for a military occupation of it. And you know what? to the degree that the Atlanta PD and all the ancillary agencies are correct in speaking about all these other people who came from outside of that community to stand against it, fucking good on them.
An
Like,
injury
good
to
on
one is an
everyone.
injury to all.
Yes, and that's the only thing we can do. You know, people kind of talking about this becoming the next Standing Rock. You know, this becoming like and that's all we have left is to, you know, even if you have a hope in electoral politics, even if you think that there are avenues, you know, available within there, all of these
Even
things are
if
so
it takes
delayed.
10 years and we still lose, even if we never get to stop fighting, it is important to stop what they're doing. You know, the what we are trying to do is end domination, right? That's what I'm trying to do as an anarchist, right? That's my ideology, and so we never stop trying to end it until it's ended, right? And so
Yeah, and in that case, that is there's not a even if. There's no if. There's not going to be a point in our natural fucking lives where that fight is not on the table and where that fight is not critical. Like, we can make so much progress, and you know, maybe the fight has a lower stakes where it's not just we are shoveling human beings into the grist mill just to keep the machines lubricated. Like, maybe we get past that. That's still going to be a fight, but I think that's I don't know, man. You know, if nothing else, through a lot of our more recent conversations, you know, from pipelines to this, like, just there's been a kind of a settling in me going like, okay, there's a lot of contingencies and a lot of different ways things could break and a lot of ways things could go down. There's no avenue I see where there's not enough of a fight where you want to make sure that you got, you know, you're taking care of the community that's going to be in the trenches with you, because you're going to be in the trenches with them. There's no avoiding that part.
Yep.
Andy,
You
say
can
something
find me on
profound
YouTube.
and or tell people where to find you.
No, it is, you know, domination is a discrete value, and so you can't get rid of it by reducing it. 1/4 of domination is still domination, right? You have to divide by domination. No domination left, right?
Andy, I was being facetious, but goddamn if you didn't do it. That is good. That is, when you say it like that, it just seems like it should be awful clear, but it so often is not.
Yep. Thank you. You can find me on YouTube at Pamphleteer. That's PAMPHLETEER. And then you can find me on Tumblr at the fuck is my Tumblr.
Oh my god.
Click at pamphlet TYR.
I really wish that screening was available just so you could be the fuck is my Tumblr on Tumblr. It'd be
That
very
would be
appropriate.
good. And my next video is about why J.K. Rowling has always been a fascist. And my current video is a political take at certain songs, which, you know, a lot of leftists are familiar with. It's very good. Thank you for listening. You should share this podcast with people who might like it or benefit from it.
Indeed. We really lean hard into the kind of community support element of it. We are real lucky to share some crossover with the Pamphleteer and Co. Discord community. We love you all. We will try to be back more often. I say this every time, and I always hope it is more true than the last time.
Bye. That's for you in the recording, since you're going to have to cut it. Unless I accidentally trigger your NAS into ODD, and you're just like, oh, you think I'm going to cut this, you motherfucker? Think you fucking can. You have to hear it in crisp HD.